YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. Articles here for you. Those are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of reviewjournal.com. It says, price tag for defense in Bunkerville standoff case tops $1 million. Now, I'll tell you what, if this don't frost you, I don't know what will. These guys should not even be in prison, much less us footing the bill on this. Ought to be some lawmakers that should be held accountable for all this. But let me read you what it says here. This says it was updated on May the 23rd. And it says taxpayers already have spent over $1 million to provide legal representation for the 19 men accused of participating in the 2014 armed standoff in Bunkerville. Now, I'll interject here. Off in Bunkerville that would have never happened had it not been for the BLM going in there and wrestling and doing illegal activities and beating up on the public. As of last week, federal government had paid $1,028,154.30 to defend the lawyers or to defense lawyers, investigators, paralegals, and others who have played a role in defending those accused of staging a mass assault on federal agents who in April of 2014 tried to seize cows from public lands. The cattle seizure operation was met by Bundy family and loosely organized militia groups who traveled from across the West to protest what they viewed as improper federal overreach. 2016, a federal grand jury returned an indictment charging 19 men with conspiracy and various other crimes for their roles in what escalated to an armed standoff. Private defense attorneys were for the majority of defendants, but some chose instead to represent themselves, paying for a private attorney, local criminal defense lawyer Brett Whipple. Two of the men charged in the case pled guilty to take their cases to trial. The costs associated with the court-appointed representation were detailed in court documents provided Friday to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. The $1 million figure is likely to balloon as federal prosecutors proceed with trials in the high-profile case. Initially, only 3 trials were scheduled, but a mistrial was declared in the first trial last month after jurors deadlocked on 50 of the 60 counts against 6 defendants. 4 of those men were scheduled to be retried in June, a development that is expected to significantly increase the total cost taxpayers will bear as the federal government prosecutes the biggest case in the district this year. 5 court-appointed defense attorneys in the first trial. Collectively, they already have spent $344,012, and it's possible that some lawyers still have not billed for all of the hours they spent working on the trial. Meanwhile, attorneys' fees for other defendants who incarcerated pending trial or who pled guilty have reached $365,172.90. $1,000 has been paid out to experts, which include investigators, paralegals, and others who have provided legwork and other services to the defense attorneys. The U.S. Attorney's Office declined to provide costs of prosecution thus far. Jen Wilson at reviewjournal.com, and it also gives a phone number here. She's the one that came up with this article. Now, I'm not saying that these guys shouldn't be defended. I'm saying that this shouldn't be going on in the first place. And since going out that was caused land management, I say that that money should come out of it for the Bureau of Land Management here. And whoever told them to get in the first place, going out there and wrestling them cattle, killing that man's cattle, beating those people up, fools and renegades, it should come out of their pockets, not the taxpayers. the American people start standing up, the government is pulling on us, this kind of foolishness is going to continue. The next article, this is off of Western Journalism, has to do with North Korea. It says North Korea ramps up missile production after successful test. Moving to mass produce the missile it successfully tested Sunday, North Korea's news agency reported on Monday. The two missile flew 310 miles and soared to a height of 50 miles, which comes on the heels of a successful test. A longer range missile, experts said, could hit the U.S. bases in the Pacific island of Guam. However, it was not the missile's range that worried experts as much as its demonstration that North Korea's missile program has become harder for its enemies to attack. Sunday's rocket was fired from a mobile launch vehicle and used solid fuel. This means the missile can be fueled and loaded in one place before being launched in another, making it hard for anyone to prepare for an attack. After the test called for mass production of the weapon, Korea said the missile it tested Sunday can strike U.S. targets. One expert said it's doubtful. Trajectory, the same missile carrying a similar payload would have a range of about 780 miles, according to David Wright, co-director of the Global Security Program at the Union of Scientists. North Korea to strike targets in Japan and South Korea, however. North Korea's state-run media said the testing should make America tremble. The administration would be well advised to lend an ear to the voices of concern from the U.S. and international community, the Mingju Joseon in a commentary on Sunday. Acronym for the North's official name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The commentary added, capable of striking the U.S. will be launched from the this is the DPRK's answer to the Trump administration. South Korea said that the launch will make North Korea's missile program even stronger. South Korean and U.S. intelligence authorities assess that North Korea, through its missile launch yesterday, meaningful data for improving the credibility of its missile technology, said Ra Jae-chong, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. Said the new test rebuffs efforts to reach a diplomatic settlement. The repeated provocation is a reckless and irresponsible behavior, like pouring cold water on the wishes of our new government unity for denuclearization and peace to prevail in the Korean Peninsula, said a statement from South Korea's foreign ministry. Sunday's tests also came as the Navy announced the aircraft carriers USS Ronald Reagan joining the USS Carl Vinson off the Korean Peninsula. Of Liberty Riders. It says, never again. What Trump did right after seeing Holocaust Memorial made the world rejoice. Knows much about Donald Trump, knows that he has always been a friend of the Jews of the world and a big-time supporter of Israel. However, today that support became a promise. Mr. Trump was so moved by the Holocaust Memorial, he visited Israel today, that he made a promise which reshaped the world. Pledged to defend the Jewish people and Israel. He told the crowd outside the Holocaust Memorial, the state of Israel is a strong and soaring monument to the solemn pledge we repeat and affirm. Never again. Trump promised to all the American, or try that again. Trump promised to all the America will not, under him, ever become the bystanders of barbarity again. Amen, Mr. President. As a Jewish American myself, it's great to see a president who actually supports Israel over Iran. Now, does that seem like the words of an alleged anti-Semite to y'all? Nah, me either. Once again, Donald Trump has shown that the leftist propaganda cannot be trusted. If you are proud of having a president who genuinely cares about America's ally, the Jewish people, and the state of Israel, then let Trump know by spreading this to everyone. The next article is off of Liberty Writers. Meeting the Palestinian president told Trump 3 words that made him smile in triumph. The whole world was excited to see President Trump's historic meeting today with Palestinian President Abbas in Bethlehem. It was to start the Israeli-Palestinian peace deal to end all peace deals. However, Trump himself was shocked when he saw the amazing thing that Abbas did to welcome. Abbas declared Donald Trump the man of peace. To welcome the U.S. president, President Abbas hung banners around Bethlehem that read, "The city of peace welcomes the man of peace." Look, no matter how you cut it, this is a big freaking deal. The declaration of Trump as the man of peace says tons for Trump as Trump's promise of peace. However, the news gets even better. You see, after the 2 men met and had a joint press conference, Abbas made a declaration that nobody saw coming in 100 years. This will go into history that President Donald Trump was the American president who achieved peace between the Palestinians and Israel. Wow. See, there's never been a U.S. president who managed to accomplish that. Hell, the entire UN has never even come close. However, with just a few months in office, Trump did the impossible. Now, this does not mean there is peace yet. However, it is the closest thing we've ever seen, and it's time to show our support. The next article is off of Conservative Tribune. It says Chinese Air Force scrambled to buzz U.S. plane. It appears that Russia isn't the only kid on the block for the United States to worry about. An American surveillance plane was recently intercepted by Chinese fighter jets, and the nation's aggressive behavior has caught the attention of the U.S. Air Force. The Washington Examiner reported last week over the East China Sea, a U.S. WC-135 Constant Phoenix aircraft equipped to detect nuclear weapons activity found itself head-to-head with 2 Su-30 jets of the Chinese Air Force. The formidable fighters were developed as Russia's answer to the F-15 Eagle, but are now used by several countries outside of the old Soviet bloc. American diplomats were investigating the incident, which was deemed unprofessional by the U.S. military. The issue is being addressed with China through appropriate diplomatic and military channels, stated Lieutenant Colonel Lori Hodge, an Air Force spokeswoman. Oops. Hamster's going wacky in his wheel here. Let's get this under control. Reports indicate that the WC-135 was deployed from Air Base in Okinawa, Japan. The so-called nuke sniffing aircraft was being used to monitor North Korean nuclear testing in order to provide advanced warning of warhead detonations in the unstable communist nation. The incident between the Chinese jets and the American aircraft could indicate growing tensions between 2 powerful nations. China claims the area of the East China Sea as its territory, but Japan disputes these claims. The volatile Korean peninsula is also located in the region, exacerbating the complex power struggle. New Dayo Islands, and I'm guessing that I'm pronouncing that right, were formerly claimed by Japan in 1895 and have been privately owned by a series of Japanese citizens for most of the past 120 years. The Council on Foreign Relations explained about this disputed region. China began to reassert its claims over the islands in the 1970s, citing historic rights to the area. Are believed to hold significant oil reserves, making them potentially valuable to all parties. With luck, cooler heads will prevail, and a non-violent solution sea conflict can be found. However, the region could erupt into turmoil, and the United States could be caught in the middle. The next article is off of the Conservative Tribune. Obama still thinks he's president. Attending World Leader Summit. Douglas MacArthur, in his farewell speech, told America that old soldiers never die, they just fade away. Lucky with old presidents? During President Donald Trump's first trip abroad, the recently departed tenant at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will also be heading across the Atlantic, this time to Berlin, where he'll be teaming up with his old pal, German Chancellor Angela Merkel. According to the Washington Times, Merkel and Obama, quite a step down from Laurel and Hardy, if you ask me, will be appearing together Thursday at a forum called Being Involved in Democracy, Taking Responsibility Locally and Globally. While that sounds like the kind of book that Noam Chomsky would write the forward to, it's actually part of an event by the Deutscher Evangelikers Kirchentag, which translates to German Protestant Church Conference, to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Reformation. The event is being sponsored by the Obama Foundation. President Barack Obama attending the Kirchentag in Berlin, which will ring in the Reformation summer, underlines the international character of our 500th anniversary celebrations. The statement on the event's website by Bishop Henrik Bedford Strom read, "The churches form a global civil society network of over 2 billion Christians. Together as people of faith, we live from the firm hope for a better world. Anyone who is pious also has to be political minded. I'm looking forward to the enthusiastic debates during the Reformation summer of 2017. This is somewhat ironic when you consider the fact that the president wasn't actually too keen on protecting the rights of Christians at home or abroad during his presidency. Also ironic is the location of the event, Berlin's iconic Brandenburg Gate. Back in 2008, then Senator Obama wished to speak there while he was on the campaign trail, but Merkel vetoed it, feeling it was unseemly for an individual to give a campaign speech in front of one of Germany's most hallowed landmarks. What, pray tell, does Merkel think that the former president is doing now? This is a man who seems utterly thunderstruck that Americans decided to take his endorsement of Hillary Clinton and please to vote Democrat last November as part of a pronouncement from the chair. So instead of embracing tradition and fading back into the background to give his successor room, he jets around the world telling us how we really, really should have listened to him, even as our actual elected president embarks on his first major world tour. Goes off of BizPac Review. British reporter blasts hypocrites. To let jihadi in, we chose for our little girls to be slaughtered. Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, the leader of the city where 22 people were killed in a terror attack on Monday, said it's business as usual in the city. British writer and anti-radical Islam crusader Katie Hopkins, who some have called the British Ann Coulter. I want to scream at him, business as usual. Hopkins wrote an op-ed for the Daily Mail. It says, tell that to a mother of 16-year-old Georgina Callender. Someone slaughtered her most precious thing, the tiny baby she carried, birthed, equipped with all the things that she could protect her from the world with, smiling at her loveliness as she became a young woman. And you say it's business as usual? The dead never carry on as normal. Hopkins called the talk after the attack the new Lord's Prayer of a terrorized generation. We stand united. We are not broken. We are strong, she wrote, mocking what the politicians usually say following these typical attacks, repeated like a mantra. She compared her fellow citizens to ants acting busy while waiting for another foot to fall on them. Katie Hopkins, that's the British Ann Coulter. I couldn't remember, but suddenly I did. Tweeted it in case anyone else was wondering, someone wrote on Twitter. Another one wrote, Katie Hopkins is the British Ann Coulter, but possibly more callous. Hopkins smashed the impotent politicians who highlight, my goodness. Hopkins smashed the impotent politicians who highlight the acts of kindness average citizens, like a homeless man who ran to rescue the dying children. The people helping are reacting instinctively, battling against blood and death, she said. They are not standing up to terror. They are not showing we are strong. They are trying to scoop up the handfuls of flesh that is weak and stop it bleeding, she added. People ought to be rewarded, not used by politicians trying to push the narrative that this is business as usual. When the only option is to carry on as normal, what the hell else are we going to do? Carry on as normal is not defiance or strength, it is default. When someone dies in our family, we carry on because the alternative is to lie down under our hope the world goes away, and sometimes we even try that for a bit too. But in the end, reluctantly, we default and carry on as normal. This does not make us strong or united. It makes us desperate to feel better. Hopkins joined Fox and Friends on Wednesday, and she was still visibly outraged. We're making choices in this country, she said. We chose to let the jihadi back in, and we chose, therefore, for our little girls to be slaughtered. We chose to respect the human rights of jihadis, 3,000 of whom are roaming those streets because their human rights matter more. We're defending that over our small babies. She said the West is losing the war to the Islamic State and are in denial about it. If this is them losing, we really don't want to see them winning, she said. We're tired of buying into the narrative that and the jihadis are weak, she said. And I think that should be strong. Try that again using the correct word. It says, we're tired of buying into the narrative that we're strong and jihadis are weak. We've been knocked down, we've been trampled on, and I think the general population is fed up with being treated so awfully, seeing our little ones slaughtered just to look after the rights of these terrorists that want to kill us. Well, she's got the guts to say it. That's more than I can say for a lot of them. The next one here is off of Liberty Headlines. How's to keep striking? Attack took the lives of at least 22 people and injured 59 more on Monday. Great Britain, a radical Islamic terror group, vowed to keep striking. A chilling message on social messaging app Telegram from the ISIS supporting group said vehicle attacks will take place in the UK. The British news site Daily Express reported. Today, we fight you on our land, on your land, by Allah's permission, the messaging said, according to the Daily Express. Soon the vehicle attacks will be witnessed on your streets by Allah's permission. On Monday evening, suicide bomber detonated explosives that created the deadly chaos at the Ariana Grande concert. The program was finishing. The Islamic State claimed responsibility. Of the Caliphate was able to place an explosive device within a gathering of the Crusaders in the city of Manchester, said a statement allegedly from ISIS. Old American singer tweeted after the incident that she was feeling broken. The explosion coincided with the conclusion of a pop concert, which was attended by many young families and groups of children, Prime Minister Theresa May of Britain said in a televised statement. This attack stands out for its appalling, sickening cowardice, desperately targeting innocent, defenseless children and young people who should have been enjoying one of the most memorable nights of their lives. A sick video has surfaced online showing an ISIS jihadist saying this is only the beginning after the Manchester terror attacks, the UK's Mirror online reported. In the unverified footage, a man wearing a mask and sitting in front of a black flag is making the ominous warning. The attack this week took place as President Donald Trump continues his first foreign trip and meets overseas with leaders of the Islamic, Jewish, and Christian faiths. That goal is to meet history's great test, to conquer extremism and vanquish the forces of terrorism, Trump said Sunday while speaking in Saudi Arabia to leaders of dozens of Muslim nations. Terrorists do not worship God, they worship death, Trump said. If we do not act against this organized terror, then we know what will happen. Terrorism's devastation of life will continue to spread. The next article is off Liberty Headlines. It's your chance to catch up here. BBC says Europe has to get used to the bombings. Bombing that just rocked the UK, BBC host said that Europeans have to get used to more Islamic terror attacks. Speaking on MSNBC's Morning Joe on Tuesday, Kay said that Europeans have no choice but to accept terrorists murdering their children because it's impossible to get rid of the Islamic terrorism. Getting used to attacks like this, Micah, they have to, because we are never going to be able to totally wipe this out, Kay said. As ISIS gets squeezed in Iraq, we're going to see more and more of these kinds of attacks taking place in Europe, and Europe is starting to get used to that. Kay then said that nobody is used to having children targeted, suggesting that Europeans are more acclimated to adults being killed by terror attacks. Kay isn't the only person to tell people to get used to terror attacks rather than offer a solution. London's own Mayor Sadiq Khan said Islamic terror attacks are part and parcel of living in a big city following the Manhattan bombing last September. That means being vigilant, having a police force that is in touch with communities. It means security services being ready, but it also means exchanging ideas and best practice, Khan said. Interestingly, the 23-year-old terrorist identified as Salman Abedi was known to authorities before he committed the attack, reported CBS. There are over 3,000 potential terrorists that have been monitored in the UK since 2015, including about 400 ISIS-trained fighters that have returned from war zones in Syria and Iraq, according to British security services. So far, 22 people, including children, were killed and over 50 injured when Abedi blew himself up at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England, attended by 21,000 people. The article is off of BizPac Review. It says, Manchester bomber, a known threat. Neighbors called him the face of hate. 3 more suspects arrested. Manchester suicide bomber Salman Abedi was an ISIS supporter who was called the face of hate by some neighbors. Abedi, who was born in England to Muslim refugees from Libya, recently returned from a 3-week trip to ISIS hotbeds in Syria, said. As was the case with many terrorists, Abedi had identified as a potential threat by British intelligence, but was ignored until he murdered 22 innocent people, mostly young girls, in a Manchester arena. Okay. While mainstream media had initially dismissed Abedi as a lone wolf, British police said Wednesday it's very clear he was part of a terrorist network. Neighbors described Salman Abedi as a brooder who looked like the face of hate. Others said he seemed like a normal 22-year-old student who loved soccer and video games. Business classes in 2014, classmates said he abruptly stopped coming to class in 2016, the Daily Mail reported. A turning point for Abedi occurred in 2011 when his father abruptly left the family to fight in Libya. Since then, Salman and his brother Ismaili Abedi began glorifying ISIS and the fight in Syria on social networks. Ismail, age 23, and Salman's younger brother, along with one other person, have since been arrested in connection with the attack. Also arrested was Ramadan Abedi, the father of Salman Abedi, whom authorities say have connections with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Dr. Zudi Jasser, a Muslim reformer, said he's not surprised that Salman Abedi was the ISIS sympathizer and was part of a terrorist network. Jasser said that these Muslim terrorists rarely act alone, so the media needs to stop dismissing them as lone wolves. The denial needs to stop, Jazzer told Fox News. We need to have a revolution against political Islam. We need to wake up. We have a problem. The problem is the theoretic Islamism. The next article is off of BizPac Review. It says, let the Americans fight. U.S. soldier asks refugee men why they're enjoying welfare in other countries while we fight in theirs. Although an asylum seeker from Iraq thanked and shook the hand of an American soldier for fighting Islamic State terrorism in his home country, he had no interest in doing so himself. He indicated that he led his wife and family back in the war-ravaged home so that he could get fat off of Denmark's liberal welfare system. That it was entirely fair for the United States to fight for his freedom so that he could lay back and let the other guy do it. He wasn't even interested in helping the Americans fight. No, I have no problem in Iraq, he told a soldier. Yeah, that problem is called the bullets and bombs the family he left behind are dodging every day. The soldier interviewer got much the same response from Syrian refugees as left his family back at home. I'm no need go to war, he told his interviewer. And the Islamic State don't get along, so yeah, I'm coming here. Special case how? The Islamic State. During the Vietnam War era, singer-songwriter Phil Ochs recorded a ditty called Draft Dodger Rag, in which he proclaimed that if you ever get a war without, I'll be the first to go. And it's doubtful that even under those circumstances that these two refugees would be interested in returning home. Life's too good in Denmark, and liberals want to open the floodgates to them here. Next article. See, I have a solution for this. I'm just going to stop right here in a minute. You got all these so-called refugees or immigrants or whatever you want to call them, and most of them are fighting age adults, males. And instead of us taking them into all these other countries, whether it be any of the European countries, this country, Australia, whatever country you want to name, instead of them going outside of their own countries, why don't we make them stay? Tell them no. You're fighting age, you fight for your country. Up to this. The next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, Wasserman Schultz interfered with criminal probe of her IT staffer. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of the U.S. Capitol Police with consequences for holding equipment that she says belongs to her in order to build a criminal case against a Pakistani staffer suspected of massive cybersecurity breaches, funneling sensitive congressional data off-site. Used her position on the committee that sets the police force's budget to press its chief to relinquish the piece of evidence Thursday in what could be considered using her authority to attempt to interfere with criminal investigation. Outside agencies are pursuing Imran Awan, who has run technology for the Florida lawmakers since 2005 and was banned from the House network in February on suspicion of data breaches and theft. My understanding is that the Capitol Police is not able to confiscate members' equipment when the member is not under investigation, Wasserman Schultz said in the annual police budget hearing of the House Committee on Appropriations Legislative Branch Subcommittee. We can't return the equipment, Police Chief Matthew R. Venderosa told the Florida Democrat. I think you're violating the rules when you conduct a business that way, and you should expect that there will be consequences, Wasserman Schultz said. As one of the 8 members of the Committee on Appropriations Legislative Branch Subcommittee, Wasserman Schultz is in charge of the budget of the police force that is investigating her staff and how he managed to extract so much money and information from members. In a highly unusual exchange in the Florida lawmaker, or try that again, in a highly unusual exchange, the Florida lawmaker uses a hearing on Capitol Police annual budget to spend 3 minutes repeatedly trying to extract a promise from the chief that he will return a piece of evidence being used to build an active case. If a member loses equipment and it's found by your staff and identified as that member's equipment and the member is not associated with the case, is it supposed to be returned? Yes or no, she said. Police tell her it is important to an ongoing investigation, but presses for its return anyway. A federal employee with knowledge of the situation and who requested anonymity told the Daily News Foundation's investigative group that the House authorities closed in on Imran Awan and his brother. A laptop used by Imran was hidden in an unused crevice of the Rayburn House office building. Wasserman Schultz office in its Longworth House office building, a separate structure. The laptop was later found by Capitol Police and seized because it was relevant to the criminal investigation, sources said. The investigation is examining members' data leaving the network and how Awan managed to get members to place 3 relatives and a friend who largely no-show positions on their payrolls, billing $4 million since 2010. The Congresswoman characterized the evidence as belonging to her and argues that therefore it cannot be seized unless Capitol Police tell her that she personally, as opposed to her staffer, is a target of the investigation. When the DCNF asked Wasserman Schultz Monday if it could inquire about her strong desire for the laptop, she said, "No, you may not." After the DCNF asked why she wouldn't want the Capitol Police to have any evidence they may need to find and punish any hackers of government information, she abruptly turned around in the middle of a stairwell and retreated back to the office from which she had come. Her spokesman, David Dameron, then emerged to say, "We just don't have any comment." Though on the surface, Wasserman Schultz would have been a victim of Awan's scam, she has inexplicably protected him, circumventing the network ban and retitling him as an advisor instead of a technology administrator. Politico described him and his wife, Hina Alvi, as having a friendly personal relationship with both Wasserman Schultz and Representative Gregory Meeks of New York. That baffled a Democratic IT staffer who said, "I can't imagine why she'd be that good of a friend with a technology provider. Usually if someone does bad stuff, an office is going to distance themselves rather than incur political fallout for a mere staffer," he added. Wasserman Schultz resigned as chairman of the Democratic National Committee in 2016 after the WikiLeaks published thousands of internal emails obtained by as yet an unidentified hacker. The last 30 seconds of the exchange can also be seen here in a video of the events, if you want to pull it up and listen to that for yourself. That's how this reads. It says, DWS says, "I'd like to know," and that's Debbie Wasserman Schultz, in case you don't know, "I'd like to know how Capitol Police handle equipment that belongs to a member or staffer that's been lost in the Capitol complex and found or recovered by one of your officers. What happens?" Chief says, "It's processed on a PD-81, which is a property record. And depending on the property, depending on how you can determine ownership, it's generally turned back over to the owner of a property. If it's part of an ongoing case, then there are other things that have to occur for that to happen." And she says, "So if a member says there is equipment that has been lost and you find it, would it be returned to the member?" And the chief says, "In a general sense, yes. You have to be able to positively identify the property and be able to establish ownership." And she says, "If ownership is established," and the chief says, "if it's part of an ongoing case, then there are additional things that need to be done." And she says, "But if a member owns the equipment and there is no ongoing case related to that member, then the equipment is supposed to be returned." And he says, in general sense, yes. And she says, no, I mean it in a specific sense. If the member loses the equipment, says they lose the equipment, and it's found by the Capitol Police, is it supposed to be returned? He says, if ownership has been established, it will be returned. If it's a subject to an ongoing investigation, there are additional things. And she says, okay, but not an ongoing investigation related to that member. If the equipment belongs to that member, it has been lost. They say it's been lost. It's been identified as the members. Then the Capitol Police are supposed to return it. He says, I can't give a yes or no answer on that because I know. And then she interrupts him and says, it's a simple yes or no answer. If a member loses equipment and it's found by your staff and identified as that member's equipment, and the member is not associated with any case, it is supposed to be returned, yes or no. He says it depends on the circumstances. She says, I don't understand how that's possible. Members' equipment is members' equipment. My understanding is that the Capitol Police is not able to confiscate members' equipment when the member is not under investigation. It is their equipment and it's supposed to be returned. He says, I think there are extenuating circumstances in this case, and working through my counsel and the necessary personnel, if that in fact is the case, and with the permission of through the investigation, then we'll return the equipment. But until that happens, we can't return the equipment. She says, I think you're violating the rules when you conduct your business that way, and you should expect that there will be consequences. Like she has something to hide, but I could be wrong. We'll have to watch it unfold. Off of Liberty Riders. To comb that with a fine-tooth comb and find out what's in it. Lord have mercy. Anyway, this is off of Liberty Riders. It says, watch the one video that Democrats don't want you to see about Russian investigation. The Democrats have been parading around the Russia story for so long they can't see the forest even when they don't have any evidence to stand on. Both the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and the former CIA Director, John Brennan, have said they do not have evidence of collusion between the Trump administration and the Russian government, yet the story continues. And if that isn't clear enough for the doubters, this video that shows every person, including Clapper and Brennan and high-ranking Democrats, saying that there is no evidence of collusion on one hand and then crying Russia on the other. And if you want to watch the video, you can pull it up and watch that one for yourself. There's a tweet out of Boca Vista says, Dear Dems, no evidence means no evidence. Stop wasting our tax dollars. And I say amen to that. How long will Democrats be allowed to push their false narrative without evidence? Enough is enough. It's time to stop their lies for good. This video shows time and time again that there has been no evidence of collusion, yet the Democrats continue to push their false narrative. That's why they need to be reminded that even from the mouths of their own politician, there is no evidence of collusion. Oh, man. Next is off of Liberty Headlines. Family of Seth Rich demands that police release information to the public. The family of the deceased Democratic National Committee DNC staffer Seth Rich is calling on local police to publicize details of the murder investigation, according to the Daily Mail. The family has full confidence in the Metropolitan Police Department's ability to proceed with the investigation, said Brad Bauman, a spokesperson for the family. The Daily Mail reports the large amount of hearsay and conspiracy theories surrounding the case, maybe it's time for the police department to be more forthcoming with the information regarding the investigation and to update people of Washington, D.C. on the status of the case. Rich, age 27, was the voter expansion data director at the DNC, according to roll call, and had been employed for 2 years. Rich also worked on a computer application to help voters locate polling stations and had just accepted a job with Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. According to Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police reports, Officers patrolling the Bloomingdale neighborhood heard gunshots around 4:20 a.m. on the morning of July 10, 2016. Officers discovered a conscious and breathing Rich at 2100 Flagler Place, Northwest. Police have not yet solved the case, but surmised that Rich was a victim of a botched robbery. Police said that they found his wallet, credit cards, and cell phone on his body. The band of his wristwatch was torn but not broken. The current theory maintains that the shooters panicked after shooting Rich and immediately fled the scene. Refused to divulge information on the case to the public. The Daily Caller News Foundation obtained the public incident report, which revealed that at least 3 responding officers were wearing body cameras. When the DCNF reached out to the police for information regarding the presence of body cams or surveillance footage near the scene of the crime, the department refused to confirm or deny the existence of surveillance footage. News of the family's request comes just days after Fox News retracted a story that claimed Rich may have been behind a breach of the DNC's email servers, where WikiLeaks obtained thousands of internal email communications that it leaked to the public. Rod Wheeler, a Washington-based private investigator hired by the Rich family, suggested that there was tangible evidence that Rich had communicated with WikiLeaks before his death. The next day, Wheeler seemed to those claims, and local police said that his assertions were unfounded. The Rich family, according to the New York Times, now regrets hiring Wheeler and has publicly objected to his claims. The Metropolitan Police Department told the DCNF that it is in communication with the family but would not release any further information at this time. When asked if Seth Rich case being handled according to standard operating procedure, the department's public information office said that it would be a question for investigators. While the family still have confidence in the Metropolitan Police Department's ability to investigate Seth's murder, of course, they are frustrated with the lack of evidence, leads, and credible information about the case, Bauman told the DCNF. They desperately want to find Seth's murderers and bring them to justice as quickly as possible. A Washington, D.C. lobbyist who is offering $105,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction of those responsible for Rich's death is challenging the DC or the DNC, the RNC, and Fox News personally, Sean Hannity, to match his offer. If they care so much about the Seth Rich family, they should put up at least what I put up, attorney Jack Berkman told the DCNF. All they do is talk, no action, Berkman continued. I don't know who is worse, the DNC, who haven't done a thing, or Sean Hannity, who talks about it every night without action. All talk, no action, he repeated. Berkman, who is leading a separate independent investigation, said that he supports the family's demand that the police go public with its information. He also said that his team is pursuing details that have not yet been made public. We are now in the process of pursuing other footage that has not been made public, Berkman claimed. When asked if he thought that there was a video out there that hasn't been released, Berkman said, "We believe it exists." The Metropolitan Police Department denied a Freedom of Information Act request from the DCNF asking for details regarding Rich's murder. We have determined that the request records pertain to an open investigation, and disclosure of these records would interfere with any prospective information or enforcement proceedings, the police department said in its response. The DCNF is now appealing the letter to Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. The next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, San Francisco creates legal office to defend illegal immigrants from deportation. San Francisco Public Defender's Office launched new unit Tuesday dedicated to representing illegal immigrants faced with deportation and focused on providing local tax money for cases heard in the city's federal immigration courts. The Special Immigration Division, one of only 3 such programs in the country, consists of 3 deputy public defenders and a paralegal, reports NBC Bay Area. San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee authorized $200,000 in city payroll savings to be used to fund the program through the end of 2017. Officials expect the unit to handle around 150 clients per year. Only 10% of the 1,500 detained immigrants that currently have court dates in San Francisco. Lee, the city board of supervisors, and public defender Jeff Epstein reached a deal for the new office in March. After months of negotiations over whether the public defender's office should represent detained immigrants, and if so, to what extent. While San Francisco has already funded nonprofits that provide legal aid to illegal immigrants, the new public defender's unit will specialize in cases where the defendant is already in detention, because deportation proceedings are administrative, not criminal. Illegal aliens are not automatically entitled to legal representation in immigration courts. Mass deportation is against our core values as American and San Franciscans, Chitty said. Due process still means something in this country, and we are not going to let the federal government ship off our friends and neighbors without a fight. In an April letter to 9 sanctuary jurisdictions, the Department of Justice asked California cities for proof that they are cooperating with immigration enforcement and warned that they risk losing federal grants. The DOJ specifically called out San Francisco for its stance on immigration enforcement. Just several weeks ago in California's Bay Area, after a raid captured 11 MS-13 members on charges including murder, drug trafficking, city officials seemed more concerned with reassuring illegal immigrants that the raid was unrelated to immigration than with warning other MS-13 members that they were next, the DOJ said. The estimated 44,000 illegal immigrants, including around 11,000 from Mexico, 10,000 from China, and 2,000 from the Philippines, live in San Francisco, reports NBC Bay Area. The final article this morning is off of Liberty Headlines, and it says, Trump's budget praised by conservatives, panned by McCain, Hillary, and liberals. Would we have expected anything else? Let's see what this says. President Trump's new 10-year budget plan, released this week in an unusual fashion while he's abroad and without official comment, is being generally considered a starting point for negotiations rather than a firm. The president's budget is a suggestion, said Senate Budget Committee Chairman Mike Enzi, Republican of Wyoming. The proposal projects a balanced annual budget at the end of 10 years while calling for tax cuts, so outside conservative libertarian groups are praising it. More on those high points momentarily. But on Capitol Hill, even longtime budget hawks like U.S. Representative Mark Sanford of South Carolina are calling it unrealistic, even if aspirationally praiseworthy. The proposed 3% economic growth assumes a Goldilocks scenario regarding several major economic indicators, such as sustained unemployment rate of 4.4%, when the last 10 years have averaged 7%, Sanford said. It assumes another 10 years of continuous economic expansion, which would be unprecedented because we are already in our country's third longest period of economic expansion. And it ignores significant demographic and financial headwinds, such as the continuing retirement of baby boomer generation and slowed private investment due to an increased public sphere in the economy. Conservative Senate Budget Committee member Pennsylvania sounded similar. I support the broad goals of the Trump budget, but there are particulars with which I disagree. They were matched by the editors of National Review, who wrote that Trump's budget is ill-advised in many of its particulars and incompetent in others. But as a statement of priorities, it is very much what one would expect from a conventional Republican. Increasing defense spending, paring back the least effective parts of the welfare state, and reforming the tax code are all worthwhile goals, and we hope Congress will keep them in mind once it tears up Trump budget and gets to work on the real one. And if some conservatives describe Trump's proposal as a mixed bag, centrists, not to mention liberals, who yelled bloody murder, were scathing. The budget is dead on arrival, sniffed Republican Senator John McCain of Arizona, using a familiar cliche. And presidential campaign loser Hillary Clinton called Trump's budget proposal an unimaginable level of cruelty today in a speech at the Children's Health Fund annual benefit. And under a headline of Trump's budget doesn't make sense, Maya McGinnis of the Committee for Reasonable Federal Budget wrote in the New York Times that President Trump's budget sticks to his campaign promises, including increasing military spending, investing in infrastructure, talks of tax cuts without specific offsets, and protecting Social Security and Medicare, a reassuring political promise that removes over 1/3 of the budget from consideration. The problem is those promises didn't add up on the campaign trail, and they don't now. But those were the naysayers. Plenty of conservatives were thrilled with Trump's handiwork. Indeed, Jim Antle at the Washington Examiner compiled a large roundup of outside conservatives, likening Trump's approach to that of former president and conservative hero Ronald Reagan. It is the most fiscally conservative budget since Reagan, said Chris Edwards of the Cato Institute. Grover Norquist of Americans for Tax Reform went even further. This is a Reaganite limited government, anti-waste, anti-duplication budget. It certainly makes those Republican critics who said that Trump would be a big spending populist look like idiots. Not quite so memorably, but almost as enthusiastically, hardline conservatives on Capitol Hill weighed in with praise. Finally, we have a president who presents a pathway to a balanced budget, said Ohio's Jim Jordan, founding former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. This budget provides a much-needed increase military while also reforming our welfare system and incentivizing work for able-bodied adults. President Trump's budget is a serious attempt to bring federal spending under control, said Virginia's Dave Bratt, who shocked the political world a few days ago when his conservative challenge unseated then Majority Leader Eric Cantor in 2014 primary. Bratt added that the proposal contains key provisions to secure the border, rescue Americans from Obamacare's failures, reduce government waste, build a strong military, and reform welfare programs while protecting the most vulnerable. The overall budget will now go to both House and Senate Budget Committee, and its details will be further hashed out in the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, the House Committees on Ways and Means, and the Senate Finance Committee. So there you have the news as I know it. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody hears the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. That way you'll stay informed. Have a great